The wagon wheels slipped on black ice hidden beneath fresh powder, and before Beatrice Daniels could scream, the world tilted sideways and slammed her into darkness. When consciousness crept back through the pain, she tasted copper and snow. Her left leg burned with an intensity that made her vision swim, pinned beneath the weight of her overturned wagon. The canvas covering flapped uselessly above her, torn and letting in the December wind that howled across the New Mexico mountains like a living thing. She had been foolish to attempt the pass alone, but the telegram from her sister in Las Cruces had been urgent. Cholera, come quickly. And Beatrice, always the protector, always the one who charged forward without thinking, had loaded her wagon that very afternoon in Santa Fe and driven straight into the storm that had been threatening for days. Now, as snow continued to fall in thick curtains around her, she understood with terrible clarity that she might die here. Her right arm was free, but when she tried to push against the wagon's side, it would not budge even a fraction of an inch. The wood pressed against her ribs, making each breath a struggle. Her horse was gone. The traces snapped, probably running terrified down the mountain pass. No one would come this way until spring. The road through the mountains between Santa Fe and Las Cruces was treacherous in winter, and any sensible person avoided it. She was not a sensible person, apparently. The thought made her want to laugh, but the pressure on her chest turned it into a wheeze. The cold seeped through her wool coat, through her dress, into her bones. She could no longer feel her trapped leg, which terrified her more than the pain had. Her fingers, still mobile on her free hand, were already stiff. She tried to call for help, but the wind stole her voice and scattered it across the empty wilderness. Time became strange. She drifted in and out, sometimes certain she heard her mother's voice singing the lullabies from childhood, sometimes believing she was back in Philadelphia before Papa had died and everything had changed. The snow kept falling. Her eyelashes froze together. She stopped trying to move. Then through the howling wind came a sound that did not belong to the storm. Hoofbeats. Steady and sure despite the conditions. Beatrice tried to lift her head, tried to call out, but managed only a weak croak that went nowhere. The hoofbeats stopped. She heard boots crunching through snow, quick and purposeful. Holy God! The voice was male, young, shocked. Then louder, closer. Madam? Madam, can you hear me? Here, she managed, the word barely a whisper. Under here. A face appeared in her limited field of vision, upside down as he crouched beside the wagon. Even through her blurred vision and confusion, she registered dark eyes filled with concern, a strong jaw dusted with a few days' worth of stubble, and snow gathering in black hair that fell past his collar. He could not have been much older than her own, 22 years. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, he breathed. Hold on, just hold on, all right? I'm going to get you out. He disappeared from view. Beatrice heard him moving around the wagon, assessing the situation. Then his boots appeared again near her head as he positioned himself at the side of the overturned wagon. This is going to shift, he called to her. When it does, I need you to pull yourself clear if you can. Do you understand? Yes. She dug her free hand into the snow, preparing to drag herself, though she had no idea if her body would obey. She heard him take a deep breath. Then came a sound she would remember for the rest of her life, a low grunt of effort that built into something almost primal as he lifted. The wagon creaked. The pressure on her leg intensified for one horrible moment, and she bit back a scream. Then the weight shifted, lifted, and suddenly she could breathe fully. Now, he shouted, move now. Beatrice clawed at the snow with her free hand, kicking with her good leg, and pulled herself forward. Pain exploded through her body as her trapped leg came free, but she kept moving, kept dragging herself through the snow until she cleared the wagon's shadow. Behind her came a tremendous crash as the wagon dropped back to the ground. She collapsed face down in the snow, gasping, alive. Those boots appeared beside her again. Then strong hands gripped her shoulders, carefully turning her over. The man's face came into focus above her, concern etched in every line. Snow clung to his coat, a heavy sheepskin that had seen years of use. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy, worn denim pants, a dark shirt, a bandana around his neck. A gun belt sat low on his hips. "I have you," he said, and his voice held a gentleness that seemed at odds with the raw strength she had just witnessed. "You are going to be all right. My name is Benjamin Vance. What is yours?" "Beatrice Daniels." Her teeth chattered so hard she could barely form the words. "My leg." "I know. Let me look." He moved down her body, his hands careful as he examined her left leg. Even through the layers of her skirt and petticoats, his gentle probing made her gasp. "I do not think it is broken, but it is badly damaged. We need to get you warm and out of this storm. I have a camp not far from here. Can you ride if I put you on my horse?" "I think so." "Good." He stood and moved out of her sight. She heard him rummaging through something, then he returned with a heavy wool blanket that he wrapped around her. "I am going to lift you now." Before she could respond, his arms slid beneath her knees and shoulders, and he lifted her as easily as if she weighed nothing at all. The movement sent fresh waves of pain through her leg, but she bit her lip and stayed silent. He carried her through the snow to where a large bay gelding stood waiting, ground-tied and patient despite the storm. Getting her into the saddle proved difficult, but Benjamin managed it with surprising gentleness, settling her side saddle and then swinging up behind her. His arm came around her waist, holding her securely against his chest, and he gathered the reins with his other hand. "Hold on to me," he said near her ear. "My camp is about half a mile back down the trail. I was heading up to check on some cattle that wandered into the high country when I saw your tracks and then the wagon. Thought I should investigate." "Thank you," Beatrice whispered. "Thank you for stopping." "Of course I stopped. What kind of man would I be otherwise?" He clucked to his horse, and the gelding started forward at a careful walk. "What in God's name were you doing out here alone in this weather?" "My sister!" The words came out slurred. She was so cold, so tired. "In Las Cruces. She is sick. Las Cruces is days away, especially in this storm." "I know." She felt him shake his head behind her. "Well, you will not be helping her if you freeze to death or die from that leg wound. Let us get you patched up first, then we will figure out what to do." Beatrice wanted to argue, wanted to insist that they keep moving toward Las Cruces, but her body had other ideas. The warmth of Benjamin's chest against her back, the steady rhythm of the horse's gait, and the bone-deep exhaustion all conspired against her. Her eyes drifted closed. "Stay awake," Benjamin said, jostling her slightly. "I need you to stay awake until we get to camp. Talk to me. Tell me about your sister." "Constance." Beatrice forced her eyes open. "She is 19. She went to Las Cruces 3 months ago to work as a teacher. The telegram said cholera. She asked for me. And you just loaded up and left immediately." "She is my sister. She is all I have left." His arm tightened fractionally around her waist. "You have grit, Miss Daniels." "Foolish grit, maybe, but grit nonetheless." "Is that a compliment, Mr. Vance?" "I am still deciding." Despite everything, Beatrice found herself almost smiling. The pain in her leg had settled into a constant throb, but at least she could feel it again, which meant it was not frozen beyond repair. Her hands and feet burned with pins and needles as circulation slowly returned. She focused on these sensations, using them to stay conscious as Benjamin navigated his horse through the increasingly heavy snow. True to his word, they reached his camp within minutes. It was a simple setup, a canvas tent wedged against a rock outcropping that provided shelter from the wind, a fire pit ringed with stones, and supplies stacked neatly under another sheet of canvas. He had chosen his location well. The outcropping created a natural windbreak, and the tent opening faced away from the worst of the storm. Benjamin dismounted first, then reached up to lift Beatrice down. He carried her into the tent, which was blessedly warmer than the outside air, and laid her on a bedroll. More blankets followed, piled on top of her until she was cocooned in wool. "I am going to get the fire built up and heat some water," he said. "Then I need to examine that leg properly. Do not try to move." Beatrice had no intention of moving. She watched through the tent opening as Benjamin worked with efficient speed, building up the fire until flames crackled and danced, sending blessed heat radiating outward. He hung a pot of snow over the flames to melt and heat, then disappeared to tend to his horse. When he returned, he carried his saddlebags and began pulling items from them: a tin of coffee, some dried meat, hardtack, and a small canvas roll that he set aside. The water began to steam. Benjamin poured some into a tin cup with coffee grounds and brought it to her. "Drink this slowly," he instructed. "It will help warm you from the inside." Beatrice struggled to sit up enough to drink. Benjamin slid behind her, propping her against his chest, and held the cup to her lips. The coffee was bitter and strong, and absolutely perfect. She sipped it slowly, feeling the warmth spread through her body. "Better?" he asked. "Yes, much better." "Good. Now I need to look at that leg." He settled her back down on the bedroll and moved to her feet. "I'm going to have to remove your boot and stockings. I will be as respectful as possible, but it needs to be done." "I understand." He nodded and began working on her left boot. Even his careful movements made her hiss with pain as the leather peeled away from her swollen leg. The stocking followed, revealing skin that was already darkening with bruises from ankle to knee. Benjamin's jaw tightened as he examined the damage, his fingers gently probing. "Nothing broken," he confirmed. "But you have severe bruising and possibly some torn muscles." "You were lucky, Miss Daniels. A few more minutes under that wagon, and you might have lost this leg entirely. Can I still travel?" "Travel?" He looked at her as if she had grown a second head. "Miss Daniels, you can barely move. You will not be traveling anywhere for at least a few days, possibly longer." "But Constance, we'll have to wait." His tone was firm, but not unkind. "I know you are worried about your sister, but you are in no condition to ride. The storm is getting worse, not better. The smart thing to do is wait it out here. Let your leg heal a bit, and then reassess." Beatrice wanted to argue, but logic warred with her desperation. He was right, of course. She could not even stand, let alone ride for days through mountain passes in a blizzard. And if she pushed herself and made the injury worse, she would be no help to Constance at all. "I hate this," she whispered. "I know." Benjamin pulled a clean cloth from his canvas roll, wet it with warm water, and began carefully cleaning the dirt and blood from her leg. "But sometimes the hardest thing to do is wait. Your sister is in Las Cruces, which is a real town with real doctors. She has a better chance of getting help there than you did out here on this mountain. You have to trust that she is being cared for." "You do not understand. When Papa died 2 years ago, we had nothing. No money, no prospects. I found work in Santa Fe as a seamstress, and Constance wanted to do something meaningful with her life, so she trained as a teacher. We have only had each other since Mama died, when we were children. I cannot lose her." Benjamin's hands stilled for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. "I do understand, more than you might think. But killing yourself trying to reach her will not help anyone. Right now, you need to focus on healing so you can get to her when conditions improve." He finished cleaning her leg and opened his canvas roll fully, revealing a surprisingly well-stocked medical kit. From it, he pulled strips of clean cloth and began wrapping her leg with practiced efficiency. "You know what you are doing," Beatrice observed. "I have had to patch up myself and others more times than I would like to count. Working cattle in rough country means injuries happen." He tied off the bandage and covered her leg with blankets again. "There. That should help with the swelling. I will change the wrapping tomorrow and see how it looks." "Where did you learn all of this?" "My father was a doctor back in Virginia. I grew up watching him work. A shadow passed over Benjamin's face. That was a long time ago. Beatrice wanted to ask more, but the tone of his voice suggested the subject was closed. Instead, she said, "You are from Virginia originally. Born and raised. Came west after the war. The war. So many men had come west after the war, looking to escape memories or start fresh, or simply because there was nothing left for them back east. Beatrice had heard countless stories in the 2 years she had been in New Mexico territory, tales of loss and displacement that made her own struggles seem small in comparison. "And you raise cattle?" she asked. "Work them anyway. I am a hired hand for a ranch about 20 miles from here. The owner, Bill Vargas, sent me up into the mountains to check on some breeding stock that wandered up here before the storm hit." He moved to the fire and began preparing food. "I was planning to camp for a night or two while I searched, but this storm has other ideas. We might be here longer than expected. I am sorry to be a burden." "You are not a burden, Miss Daniels. You are a person who needed help, and I am glad I was here to provide it." He glanced at her over his shoulder. "Besides, it will be nice to have someone to talk to besides my horse. Chester is a fine animal, but his conversation skills are limited." Despite everything, Beatrice found herself laughing. It hurt her ribs where the wagon had pressed, but it felt good. Chester! Named him after my commanding officer in the war. The man had about as much personality as a horse, so it seemed fitting. They fell into companionable silence as Benjamin cooked. He prepared a simple stew from dried beef, some wild onions he must have gathered, and whatever else he had in his supplies. The smell made Beatrice's stomach growl, reminding her that she had not eaten since early morning. When the stew was ready, Benjamin helped her sit up again and handed her a tin plate with a generous portion. She ate slowly, savoring each bite. It was simple food, trail food, but it tasted like the finest meal she had ever had. Benjamin sat across from her, eating his own portion and watching the storm through the tent opening. "It is really coming down now," he observed. "We might be stuck here for a few days. Do you have enough supplies? For 2 people? It will be tight, but we will manage. I brought plenty of coffee and dried goods, and I can always hunt once the storm clears if we need fresh meat." He set his empty plate aside. "What about you? Was there anything in your wagon you need? Medicine, personal items?" "My bag." Beatrice tried to remember what had happened in those chaotic moments. "It was in the back of the wagon, under the canvas. It has my clothes and my sewing kit and some letters. I will go back tomorrow if the weather permits and see what I can salvage. For tonight, you will have to make do with what I have here. Thank you, Mr. Vance, for everything." "Benjamin," he corrected. "If we are going to be stuck in a tent together for a few days, we might as well be on a first-name basis." "And you are, Beatrice?" "Most people call me Bea." "Bea." He tested the name, seemed to like it. "All right then, Bea. Why don't you try to get some rest? You have been through an ordeal, and sleep is the best medicine for healing." Beatrice wanted to protest that it was barely evening, but exhaustion weighed on her like a physical force. Benjamin helped her lie back down, tucking the blankets around her with surprising tenderness. As she drifted off, she was aware of him moving around the tent, banking the fire and settling his own bedroll on the opposite side of the small space. The last thing she remembered was the sound of the wind howling outside and the comforting knowledge that she was no longer alone. She woke several times during the night, disoriented and aching. Each time, she found Benjamin keeping watch by the fire, feeding it occasionally to maintain the warmth. Once, when she stirred with a gasp of pain, he was beside her in moments. "Your leg?" he asked quietly. "Yes." He disappeared briefly and returned with a cup of water. "Drink this. Staying hydrated will help with the healing." Beatrice drank obediently, then settled back down. "Do you ever sleep?" "I will sleep when it is light out. For now, I am keeping watch." "For what?" There is no one else out here in this storm. Habit, I suppose. And I want to keep the fire going through the night. Makes it easier if someone is tending it. He pulled the blankets back over her shoulders. Go back to sleep, Bee. I will wake you if anything happens. She wanted to tell him that he did not need to watch over her so carefully, that he should rest, but sleep claimed her again before she could form the words. Morning brought a break in the storm. Beatrice woke to find sunlight streaming through the tent opening and Benjamin moving around outside. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as her leg protested violently. Easy there! Benjamin ducked back into the tent. Let me help you. With his assistance, she managed to sit up without putting weight on her injured leg. Her whole body felt like one giant bruise, but the crushing tightness in her chest from yesterday was gone. She could breathe freely again. How is the leg? Benjamin asked. Painful, but I can feel my toes, which seems like a good sign. Very good sign. He handed her a cup of coffee. The storm has paused for now, but I think it is just taking a breath. I am going to ride back to your wagon while I can and see what I can recover. Will you be all right alone for a bit? Of course. I am not going anywhere. He smiled at that, a real smile that transformed his serious face. I suppose not. There is food in that sack by the fire if you get hungry. I should be back within an hour. Beatrice watched him go, then took stock of her situation. Her leg was wrapped carefully, and while it hurt, the pain was manageable. Her ribs were sore but not broken. Her hands and feet, which had been dangerously cold yesterday, now felt normal. All things considered, she had been extraordinarily lucky. If Benjamin had not come along when he did, she would certainly be dead. The thought sobered her. She had been so focused on getting to Constance that she had not properly considered the risks. What good would it have done her sister if Beatrice had died trying to reach her? And now, because of her impulsiveness, she was stuck in the mountains with a stranger while Constance needed her in Las Cruces. Except Benjamin did not feel like a stranger. Something about him, perhaps the gentleness in his hands when he tended her leg, or the way he spoke with quiet authority, made her feel safe. It was an odd feeling, considering she had known him less than a day. True to his word, Benjamin returned within the hour, leading Chester through the snow. Tied to the saddle was her worn leather traveling bag, looking worse for wear but intact. Found it, he called as he approached. And I managed to salvage some other things from your wagon. He untied several bundles and brought them into the tent. Your food supplies were mostly ruined, but I got your bag and some of your personal items. The wagon itself is pretty badly damaged. Even if we could ride it, I do not think it would make the journey. I suppose I should be grateful I am not in the same condition as the wagon. Very much so. He set her bag beside her. I also found this. He pulled out a small wooden frame containing a photograph. Two young women stood together, one slightly taller and darker, the other fair and delicate. Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes as she took it from him. That is Constance, she said, pointing to the fair girl. This was taken just before she left for Las Cruces. Benjamin studied the photograph. She looks like you. People say she is prettier. People are wrong. The simple statement, delivered without flattery or embellishment, made Beatrice's cheeks warm. She set the photograph carefully aside. Thank you for retrieving this. It means a great deal to me. I figured it might. He began unpacking the rest of his salvaged items. Now, let us get some food in you and take another look at that leg. The routine they established over the next few days was simple but comforting. Benjamin would wake early and build up the fire, then prepare coffee and breakfast. He would change the wrapping on Beatrice's leg, checking for signs of infection or worsening damage. Then he would tend to Chester and scout the immediate area while Beatrice rested. In the afternoons, they would talk, sharing stories and learning about each other in the way that only enforced proximity allows. She learned that Benjamin was 24 and had served in the Confederate Army, though he spoke little of the war itself. His father had died during the fighting, his mother shortly after from grief and hardship. He had an older brother who had disappeared after the war, and Benjamin had come west in hopes of finding him, though that search had long since been abandoned. I realized after about 6 months that I was not really looking for my brother anymore, he admitted on the second evening as they sat by the fire. I was just running from what I had left behind. Virginia held nothing for me but memories and regrets. Out here, I could be someone new. And who did you become? Beatrice asked. I am still figuring that out. He poked at the fire with a stick. What about you? How did you and your sister end up in New Mexico territory? Beatrice told him about her father, a shopkeeper in Philadelphia who had invested unwisely and lost everything just before he died of influenza. We had nothing left. The bank took the shop, took our house. Constance and I were living with an aunt who made it very clear we were unwelcome. A family friend knew of a seamstress in Santa Fe who needed help, and I took the job without hesitation. That must have been frightening, coming all this way alone. Terrifying, Beatrice agreed, but also freeing. We were not the poor Daniels girls out here. We were just two more people trying to make our way. No one knew about Papa's debts or our reduced circumstances. We could start fresh. It takes courage to start over. Or desperation. She smiled wryly. Sometimes I am not sure which drives me more. Does it matter? Either way, you took action. That is more than most people can say. They fell into comfortable silence, watching the fire. Outside, the storm had picked up again, but inside the tent, they were warm and dry. Beatrice found herself studying Benjamin in the firelight. He had a strong, honest face, weathered by sun and wind. His hands, when they tended her leg or passed her a cup of coffee, were calloused from hard work, but surprisingly gentle. He moved with the easy grace of someone completely comfortable in his body, whether sitting or standing or working. And he was kind. That struck her most forcefully. Not just polite or dutiful, but genuinely kind. He never made her feel like a burden, even though she clearly was. He was patient with her limitations and thoughtful about her comfort. When she was in pain, he found ways to distract her with stories or questions. When she was anxious about Constance, he reassured her without dismissing her concerns. On the third day, Beatrice woke to find that she could put slight weight on her leg without wanting to scream. The bruising had begun to fade from deep purple to yellowish green, and the swelling had reduced significantly. This is excellent progress, Benjamin said as he examined her leg that morning. I think in another day or two, you might be able to ride, at least for short distances. You mean we can leave? Once the weather cooperates, yes. We will need to go slowly, and you will need to ride with me since your horse is gone, but we should be able to make it down out of the mountains. He rewrapped her leg carefully. I am thinking we should head to my ranch rather than trying to go straight to Las Cruces. It is much closer, and you need proper rest before attempting a longer journey. Bill and his wife, Maria, will be happy to host you, and Maria is a skilled healer. She can look after your leg better than I can. The thought of leaving the tent, of returning to civilization, filled Beatrice with mixed emotions. Part of her was relieved, eager to get to Constance. But another part, a part she did not want to examine too closely, was reluctant to leave this simple existence with Benjamin. That seems very sensible, she said finally. Good. Then we will plan on leaving tomorrow if the weather holds. That afternoon, as if to spite their plans, the storm intensified to its worst yet. Wind howled around the outcropping, and snow fell so thickly that visibility dropped to nearly zero. Benjamin secured everything that could blow away and spent most of the day inside the tent with Beatrice, keeping the fire going and the tent weighted down against the wind. I have seen bad storms, but this is something else, he said, raising his voice to be heard over the wind. We made the right call to wait this out here rather than being caught in the open. I keep thinking about that morning when I left Santa Fe, Beatrice said. The sky was gray, and my landlady warned me about the weather. I thought I knew better. I thought I could outrun it. We all make those kinds of choices sometimes. The important thing is that you survived and learned from it. I learned that I need to listen to my landlady more often. Benjamin laughed, a warm sound that somehow cut through even the howling wind. That is probably good advice in general. As evening fell, the temperature inside the tent dropped despite their best efforts. Benjamin moved his bedroll closer to Beatrice's, and they huddled near the fire, wrapped in every blanket they had. "You are shivering," Benjamin observed. "So are you." He hesitated for a moment, then said, "We will stay warmer if we share body heat. It is just practical." Beatrice knew he was right, but the suggestion made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. Still, practicality won out over propriety. "All right." Benjamin arranged the bedrolls and blankets into one larger nest, then helped Beatrice settle into it. He lay down beside her, carefully positioning himself so he could share warmth without pressing too close. The fire crackled between them and the tent wall. Despite his careful distance, Beatrice was intensely aware of him. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, hear his steady breathing, sense his presence in a way that made her skin tingle. "B?" His voice was quiet in the darkness. "Yes? Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "That day, when you were trapped under the wagon, were you afraid?" She considered the question. "Honestly, I do not remember being afraid in the moment. Everything happened so fast. But after, when I was lying there, unable to move, knowing no one would find me, yes, I was terrified. Not just of dying, but of leaving Constance alone. She is younger than me, and I have always felt responsible for her. The thought that she might be sick or dying while I froze on a mountain somewhere, that she would never know what happened to me, that was the worst part. She is lucky to have you." "I do not know about that. I am the one who dragged her out west in the first place, and gave her opportunities she would not have had back east. You said she wanted to do something meaningful with her life, wanted to be a teacher. Could she have done that in Philadelphia with no money and no prospects?" "Probably not," Beatrice admitted. "Then you gave her a gift, even if it came with hardship. That is what family does. We sacrifice for each other." "Is that what you did for your brother? Came west to find him, even though you had nothing to go on?" "I suppose so. Though in the end, I think I was really trying to save myself, not him." Benjamin shifted slightly, adjusting the blankets. "After the war, I was lost. Everything I had known was gone. Everyone I loved was dead or scattered. Going after my brother gave me a purpose, even if it was futile. And when I finally accepted that I would never find him, I had to figure out who I was without that purpose. Working on the ranch helped with that. Bill and Maria gave me a place and work that mattered. I am not just running anymore. I am glad you found that." "Me too." They lapsed into silence, but it was not uncomfortable. Beatrice felt herself relaxing, despite the cold and the howling wind. There was something deeply comforting about having Benjamin so close, about knowing he was there keeping watch, even as she drifted toward sleep. "B?" His voice was even quieter now. "I am glad I found you that day. Not just because you needed help, but because meeting you has reminded me that there is still good in the world, still people worth fighting for." Beatrice's breath caught. She turned her head slightly and found Benjamin looking at her, his dark eyes serious in the firelight. "I am glad you found me too," she whispered. For so many reasons. Something shifted between them in that moment, some invisible line that had kept them at a careful distance, despite their proximity. Benjamin reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers were warm against her cheek. "You are remarkable," he said softly. "Do you know that?" "I am really not. I am just a woman who makes foolish decisions and gets herself trapped under wagons." You are a woman who loves her sister enough to risk everything for her, who survived an ordeal that would have broken most people, who faces each day with courage and grace. His hand cupped her cheek gently. That is remarkable, Bee. Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes, though she could not have said why. You barely know me. I know enough. These past few days I have seen who you are, how you face pain, how you worry about others even when you should be focused on yourself, how you find ways to smile even in dire circumstances. I have known people my whole life who showed me less of themselves than you have shown me in 3 days. Benjamin. His name was barely a whisper on her lips. He leaned closer, his intention clear, but he paused with his face inches from hers. Tell me if you do not want this. Beatrice answered by closing the distance between them. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question asked and answered. Benjamin's lips were warm against hers, and he tasted like coffee and wood smoke. She felt his hand slide from her cheek to the back of her neck, gentle but sure, as he deepened the kiss. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. Benjamin rested his forehead against hers. I have been wanting to do that since yesterday, he admitted. Only since yesterday? All right, since the first moment I saw your face when you were trapped under that wagon. Though that makes me sound like a terrible person. Beatrice laughed softly. It makes you sound human. They kissed again, longer this time, and when they settled back into the blankets, it was with Benjamin's arm around her waist and her head tucked against his shoulder. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside their small tent, Beatrice felt safer and warmer than she had in years. Morning brought clarity in more ways than one. The storm had finally broken, leaving behind a landscape transformed by snow. Everything sparkled in the bright sunlight, pristine and beautiful. Benjamin was already up when Beatrice woke, preparing breakfast and checking on Chester. How is the leg? He asked when he noticed she was awake. Better, I think. She flexed her ankle experimentally. The pain is much less than yesterday. Good, let me take a look. He came to her side and unwrapped the bandages. The bruising had faded considerably, and most of the swelling was gone. This looks much better. I think you will be able to ride today if we take it slowly. So we are leaving? Yes. The ranch is about 4 hours from here in good conditions, probably 6 hours moving slowly in this snow. But the worst of the storm has passed, and I think we can make it safely. He began rewrapping her leg with fresh bandages. Once we get you to the ranch, Maria can take over your care, and we can figure out the best way to get you to Las Cruces. The mention of Las Cruces brought Beatrice back to reality with a thud. Constance. She had been so caught up in the strange intimacy of their storm-bound days that she had almost forgotten the urgency of her sister's situation. How long do you think it will take to reach Las Cruces from your ranch? She asked. In good weather, with you healed up enough to travel, probably 4 or 5 days. Maybe a week if we encounter more storms, or if your leg needs more time. A week? Constance had sent the telegram over a week ago now. What if she was already gone? What if Beatrice was too late? Benjamin must have seen the panic on her face because he took her hand gently. Do not borrow trouble, Bee. You will drive yourself mad with what ifs. Focus on what you can control, which is healing up and getting to her as quickly as safely possible. You are right. I know you are right. It is just hard. I know. He squeezed her hand, then released it and stood. Get yourself ready to travel. I will pack up camp. Within an hour, they were ready to go. Benjamin helped Beatrice onto Chester's back, then swung up behind her. His arms settled around her waist, holding her securely, and for a moment, she let herself lean back against his solid warmth. Comfortable? He asked. As comfortable as I can be, I suppose. Then let us go home. Home. The word resonated strangely. Benjamin's ranch was not her home, yet the way he said it made her wish it could be. She pushed the thought aside and focused on staying balanced as Chester picked his way down the mountain trail. The journey was long and tedious, made more difficult by the deep snow and Beatrice's still healing leg. They stopped frequently to rest, and Benjamin was endlessly patient, never rushing her or making her feel like she was slowing them down. He pointed out landmarks as they descended, a particular twisted tree where he had once taken shelter from lightning, a creek that ran cold even in the hottest summer, a meadow where wildflowers bloomed so thick you could not see the ground. You really love it out here, Beatrice observed during one of their rest stops. I do. It is hard country, unforgiving at times, but it is honest. There is something pure about working with cattle and horses, about relying on your own skills and strength. And the land itself, when you take the time to really see it, is beautiful in a way that takes your breath away. I can understand that. When I first came to Santa Fe, I thought it was the ugliest place I had ever seen. Everything was brown and dusty, so different from Philadelphia. But after a few months, I started to see the beauty in it, the way the light hits the mountains at sunset, the smell of pinyon smoke in the evening, the incredible sky that goes on forever. Exactly. Benjamin smiled at her. You understand. They reached the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The main house was a long, low adobe structure with a portal across the front. Several outbuildings dotted the property: a barn, a bunkhouse, corrals, and storage sheds. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, and Beatrice could see the silhouettes of horses in a nearby corral. A man emerged from the house as they approached, followed by a woman wiping her hands on an apron. Both looked to be in their 40s, weathered by sun and work, but with kind faces. Benjamin, the man called. We were starting to worry. The storm was worse than we expected. I know, Bill. I had to hole up for a few days. Benjamin dismounted and then carefully lifted Beatrice down. I have a guest who needs our help. This is Miss Beatrice Daniels. This is Bill Vargas and his wife Maria. Maria's eyes widened as she took in Beatrice's condition. The way she favored her left leg, the bruises visible on her face and hands, the generally bedraggled state of her clothes. Dios mío, what happened? Maria hurried forward, immediately taking charge. Bill, help Benjamin get her inside. I will prepare the spare room. Before Beatrice could protest, she was being swept into the house and down a hallway to a small, neat bedroom. Maria directed the men to settle her on the bed, then shooed them out and began fussing over her with the efficiency of someone who had tended many injuries. Let me see this leg Benjamin mentioned, Maria said, unwrapping the bandages. She examined the injury with gentle, capable hands, then nodded. He did well with this. You are lucky he found you when he did. I know, he saved my life. That sounds like Benjamin. He has a good heart, that one. Maria began rewrapping the leg with fresh bandages from a basket she had brought. Now you will tell me the whole story while I work, and then you will have a proper bath and a good meal. You look half-starved. Beatrice found herself spilling the entire tale: the urgent telegram from Constance, her hasty departure from Santa Fe, the accident on the mountain pass, Benjamin lifting the wagon and saving her, the days spent weathering the storm in the tent. Maria listened with sympathetic sounds and knowing looks, her hands never stopping their work. And now you must get to your sister in Las Cruces, Maria said when Beatrice finished. Of course, this makes sense. But first, you must heal more. That leg needs another few days of rest at minimum before you can handle long days of traveling. I know. I just worry that I am already too late. Maria's expression softened. I understand. When someone we love is sick or in danger, waiting is the hardest thing. But you must trust that your sister is strong and that she is being cared for. Las Cruces has doctors, yes? She is not alone and suffering with no help. The telegram came from a doctor there, actually. He said she had been asking for me. Then she has medical care, which is good. And now you must focus on your own healing so you can go to her when the time is right. Maria tied off the final bandage and stood. I will bring you hot water for washing. You will feel much better when you are clean and in fresh clothes. True to her word, Maria returned shortly with two young ranch hands carrying a large tub, followed by buckets of steaming water. Once the tub was filled and Beatrice was alone, she managed to undress and lower herself into the hot water. The heat stung her bruises and cuts, but felt absolutely divine. She scrubbed away days of dirt and fear, washing her hair twice to get out all the grime. By the time she emerged, clean and dressed in a nightgown Maria had provided, she felt more human than she had since leaving Santa Fe. Maria brought her a tray with a hot meal, beef stew, fresh bread, and dried apple pie. Beatrice ate every bite, only then realizing how hungry she had been. Trail food and coffee had sustained her, but this was real sustenance. A knock at the door preceded Benjamin entering, looking freshly washed himself. His hair was still damp, and he had shaved, making him look younger and somehow more vulnerable. "May I come in?" he asked from the doorway. "Of course." He crossed to her bedside and stood there somewhat awkwardly, as if unsure what to say. Finally, he settled on. "You look better." "I feel better." "Maria is wonderful." "She is. Her and Bill both. They took me in when I first came to the ranch 3 years ago. Treated me like family. I owe them a lot." He shifted his weight. "Listen, I talked to Bill. He agrees that you need a few more days to heal before you try to travel to Las Cruces. But once you are ready, I would like to escort you there myself. I know the route, and I do not like the idea of you traveling alone again." "Benjamin, I cannot ask you to do that. You have already done so much." "You are not asking. I am offering. Besides, Bill can spare me for a week or two. The worst of the winter work is done, and the other hands can manage while I am gone." He finally met her eyes. "I want to make sure you reach your sister safely, Bee. Please let me do this." The sincerity in his voice, the concern in his eyes, made Beatrice's heart clench. "All right, thank you." "Good." He seemed to relax. "Get some rest. Maria will be checking on you regularly, and I will be around if you need anything." He started to leave, but Beatrice called him back. "Benjamin, last night in the tent, what we talked about, was that real or was it just the circumstances?" Benjamin returned to her bedside and took her hand. "It was real for me, Bee. As real as anything I have ever felt. I know the timing is complicated, and I know you have your sister to worry about. I am not asking you to make any decisions or promises right now, but I want you to know that what I feel for you is not going away just because we are not trapped in a tent together anymore." "I feel the same way," Beatrice admitted. "I did not expect this. I did not expect you. But I am grateful that Wagon overturned when it did. As strange as that sounds." "Not strange at all. I understand exactly what you mean." He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "Now rest. We will talk more tomorrow." Over the next few days, Beatrice settled into life on the ranch. Her leg continued to heal, and soon she was able to walk short distances with only a slight limp. Maria proved to be a skilled healer and a warm presence, treating Beatrice like a daughter. Bill was quieter but equally kind, often sitting with her on the portal in the evenings and telling stories about the ranch and the surrounding country. And Benjamin was there constantly, attentive without being smothering. He would help her outside for walks, showing her around the ranch property. He taught her about the cattle and horses, explaining the work that went into running a successful operation. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire in the main room, talking for hours about everything and nothing. Beatrice found herself falling deeper for him with each passing day. She loved the way his face lit up when he talked about something he was passionate about. She loved his dry humor and the surprising gentleness in his strong hands. She loved that he listened when she spoke, really listened, and remembered details from their conversations. She loved the way he looked at her, as if she was something precious and valuable. On the fourth day at the ranch, Maria declared Beatrice well enough to travel. "The leg has healed remarkably well. Maria said after examining it. You will need to be careful, and it may ache after long days in the saddle, but I think you can make the journey now. The weather has been clear, and if you leave tomorrow, you should reach Las Cruces in about 5 days. 5 days! The reality of leaving hit Beatrice harder than she expected. This ranch, with its warm hospitality and simple routines, had become a haven, and leaving meant saying goodbye to Benjamin, at least temporarily. That evening she found him in the barn, tending to Chester. The big gelding nickered softly as she approached. Maria says I can travel, Beatrice said without preamble. Benjamin straightened from checking Chester's hooves. I know, she told me. I have been preparing for the journey. Bill is lending us a second horse and enough supplies for the trip. We can leave at first light tomorrow if you are ready. I am ready. Or at least I need to be ready. Constance has been waiting long enough. Then tomorrow it is. Benjamin set down Chester's hoof and moved closer to her. B, I want you to know that no matter what we find in Las Cruces, no matter what happens with your sister, I am here for you. If you need someone to lean on, someone to help you through whatever comes next, I am that person. Do you understand? I understand. And Benjamin, thank you for everything, for saving my life, for taking care of me, for giving me hope when I felt like I had none left. You have given me more than I can ever repay. You do not need to repay me. What I have given you, you have given me in return. He cupped her face in his hands. You have reminded me what it feels like to care about someone, to want to protect and cherish someone. I had forgotten that feeling after the war. You brought it back to life. They kissed then, a slow, deep kiss that spoke of longing and promise. When they finally pulled apart, Beatrice rested her head against Benjamin's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. No matter what tomorrow brings, we will face it together, she whispered. Together, Benjamin agreed. They left at dawn, as planned. Maria packed them enough food for a week, and Bill provided a sturdy mare for Beatrice to ride. The morning was clear and cold, with frost sparkling on everything. Beatrice hugged Maria goodbye, thanked Bill profusely, and mounted the mare with only slight difficulty. Benjamin sat easy in Chester's saddle, his saddlebags packed and his rifle secured to the saddle. He looked every inch the capable cowboy, ready for whatever the trail might bring. Ready? He asked. Ready, Beatrice confirmed. They rode south, following the well-worn trail that would eventually lead them to Las Cruces. The first day passed uneventfully, the weather holding clear and cold. They made good time, stopping only to rest the horses and eat. Benjamin was an easy traveling companion, pointing out interesting features of the landscape and keeping her spirits up with stories and conversation. That night they camped under the stars. Benjamin built a fire and prepared a simple meal while Beatrice tended to her leg, which ached after the long day of riding but was holding up well. After they ate, they sat close to the fire, shoulders touching, looking up at the vast expanse of stars overhead. I never get tired of that view, Benjamin said. All those stars, all that space, makes you realize how small we are, but also how miraculous it is that we are here at all. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if the war had not happened? Beatrice asked. If you had stayed in Virginia? Sometimes. I probably would have followed my father into medicine, married some local girl, had children, lived a respectable, ordinary life. He turned to look at her. But then I would never have come west, never have learned to work cattle or sleep under these stars, never would have been on that mountain pass at exactly the right moment to find a woman trapped under her wagon. I cannot regret the path that led me here, even with all its hardships. I feel the same way. If Papa had not lost everything, if we had stayed in Philadelphia, I would probably be married to some shopkeeper or clerk by now, living a small, confined life. Coming west opened up possibilities I never would have had otherwise, including meeting you. They kissed again, and this time, It felt like a promise. When they settled into their bedrolls for the night, it was with the easy intimacy of two people who had already weathered a storm together and come out stronger. The next 4 days followed a similar pattern: long hours of riding, companionable conversation, evenings by the fire. Beatrice's leg continued to heal, and her strength returned. By the 4th day, she felt more like herself than she had since the accident. On the afternoon of the 5th day, they crested a rise and saw Las Cruces spread out in the valley below. The town was larger than Beatrice had expected, with a main street lined with buildings and several church spires rising above the roof lines. The Organ Mountains provided a dramatic backdrop to the east. "We made it," Benjamin said quietly. Beatrice felt her anxiety spike. This was the moment she had been desperate for, terrified of, rushing toward for over 2 weeks. Soon, she would know whether Constance was alive or dead, recovering, or still dangerously ill. Benjamin must have sensed her fear because he reached over and took her hand. "Whatever we find, I am right here beside you." She squeezed his hand gratefully. Then they urged their horses forward into town. Las Cruces was bustling, despite the winter chill. They navigated through the streets until they found the doctor's office, a neat adobe building with a wooden sign out front. Beatrice dismounted, her legs shaky from more than just the long ride. Benjamin tied the horses and followed her to the door. She knocked, and after a moment, a middle-aged man in a suit opened it. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I am Beatrice Daniels. You sent me a telegram about my sister, Constance." The doctor's face cleared with recognition and relief. "Miss Daniels! Thank goodness you are here. Please come in. And you are?" "Benjamin Vance, a friend of Miss Daniels." The doctor ushered them inside and closed the door. "I am Dr. Harris. Your sister is upstairs, Miss Daniels. She is weak, but she is going to recover." The relief was so intense that Beatrice's knees almost buckled. Benjamin caught her elbow, steadying her. "She is alive?" Beatrice managed. "She is going to be all right?" "Yes." The cholera hit her hard, and there were some frightening days when we were not sure. But she turned the corner about a week ago. She has been asking for you constantly. Dr. Harris gestured toward the stairs. "Go up and see her. Second door on the right." Beatrice practically ran up the stairs, Benjamin close behind her. She found the door and pushed it open. The woman in the bed was pale and thin, but her eyes were open and clear. When she saw Beatrice, her face lit up. "Bee?" Constance's voice was weak, but unmistakably hers. "You came." "Of course I came." Beatrice rushed to the bedside and took her sister's hand. "I am so sorry it took so long. I ran into some trouble on the way." "Trouble?" Constance noticed Benjamin standing in the doorway. "Who is this?" "This is Benjamin Vance. He saved my life and brought me here. It is a long story, and I will tell you everything, but first, let me just look at you. You are really all right?" "I am really all right. Weak as a kitten, but Dr. Harris says I will regain my strength with time and rest." Constance studied Benjamin with obvious interest. "He saved your life?" "I will leave you two to catch up," Benjamin said diplomatically. "I will be downstairs if you need me, Bee." After he left, Constance turned to Beatrice with a knowing look. "Tell me everything and do not leave out a single detail about your mysterious rescuer." Beatrice laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. She pulled a chair close to the bed and began the story, starting with the frantic telegram and ending with their arrival in Las Cruces that afternoon. Constance listened with wide eyes, gasping at the dramatic parts and practically bouncing in bed when Beatrice described her growing feelings for Benjamin. "He lifted an entire wagon off of you?" Constance said when Beatrice finished. "That is the most romantic thing I have ever heard." "It was certainly dramatic. And you fell in love with him." "I did not say that." "You did not have to. I can see it all over your face." Constance squeezed her sister's hand. "I am so happy for you, Bee. You deserve someone wonderful after everything you have done for me. What I have done for you is what family does. You would do the same. Maybe, but you have always been the brave one, the strong one. I am just glad you finally found someone who sees that and appreciates it. Constance yawned, suddenly looking exhausted. I am sorry. I tire so easily still. That is all right. You need to rest. I will come back tomorrow and we can talk more then. Beatrice stood and kissed her sister's forehead. I am so relieved you are going to be all right, Constance. I was so frightened. I know, but I am all right. And now so are you. Everything is going to be all right, Bea. Beatrice found Benjamin waiting outside, leaning against the building and watching the street. When he saw her, he straightened. How is she? He asked. Weak, but recovering. She is going to be fine, Benjamin. She is really going to be fine. The tears Beatrice had been holding back finally spilled over. I was so afraid I had lost her. Benjamin pulled her into his arms, letting her cry against his chest. He held her until the storm of emotion passed, murmuring soothing words and stroking her hair. I am sorry, Beatrice said when she finally pulled back, wiping her eyes. I did not mean to fall apart. You are allowed to fall apart. You have been holding yourself together through an incredible ordeal. It is all right to let go now that you know she is safe. He brushed tears from her cheeks with his thumbs. What do you want to do now? I need to find a place to stay so I can be near Constance while she recovers. And then, I suppose, we need to figure out what comes next. She looked up at him. You have done so much for me already, Benjamin. I cannot ask you to stay in Las Cruces indefinitely. You must need to get back to the ranch. Bill can manage without me for a while longer. I am not leaving you be. Not unless you want me to. I do not want you to leave, but I also cannot expect you to put your life on hold for me. You are not putting my life on hold. You are my life. Do you not see that? Benjamin took her hands. These past weeks with you, from the moment I pulled you from under that wagon, have been the most meaningful of my entire existence. I am not leaving unless you tell me you do not want me here. I want you here, Beatrice said fiercely. I want you here more than anything. Then that is settled. Let us find a hotel and get you settled. Tomorrow we can figure out the rest. They found a modest but clean hotel near the plaza and took 2 rooms. After freshening up, they shared dinner at a nearby restaurant. Over beef and beans, they talked about the future. Constance will need a few weeks to fully recover, Beatrice said. Dr. Harris told me she should not try to travel or work for at least a month. I have some money saved, enough to pay for her care and our lodging for a while, but I will need to find work soon. What about your job in Santa Fe, the seamstress position? I left in such a hurry that I did not give notice. I imagine I no longer have that job. Beatrice tried not to feel overwhelmed by the practicalities. I can sew anywhere, though. I can find work here in Las Cruces if needed. Or you could come back to the ranch with me. Beatrice looked up sharply. What? Benjamin leaned forward, his expression serious. Maria has been wanting help with the house and the cooking, especially during spring roundup when we have extra hands to feed. She mentioned it to me before we left, and Bill is talking about expanding the operation. Maybe getting some sheep in addition to the cattle. He will need someone who knows about wool and weaving. You have skills that would be valuable on a ranch, Bea. Benjamin, are you offering me a job? I am offering you a home. He reached across the table and took her hand, for both you and Constance, once she is well enough to travel. The ranch has plenty of room, and Maria would love having other women around. Constance could continue teaching if she wanted. There is a small school in the nearest town. Or she could help on the ranch too. The point is, you would both have a place to be, somewhere safe and stable. That is incredibly generous, but nothing. I love you, Bea. The words came out plain and simple, No flourishes or poetry, just truth. I fell in love with you somewhere between lifting that wagon and riding into Las Cruces, and I want you in my life, not as a guest or a temporary visitor, but as someone who belongs there. If you do not feel the same way, tell me now and I will leave you be. But if there is any chance you might feel the same, give us a chance. Come to the ranch. Build a life there with me. Beatrice felt her heart racing. This was everything she had not dared to hope for, being offered to her freely. A home, a future, and a man who loved her for exactly who she was. I love you too, she said, and watched his face transform with joy. I think I started falling for you when you appeared beside that wagon like some kind of miracle, and every day since has only made me more certain. Yes, Benjamin. Yes to all of it. Yes to the ranch, and yes to building a life with you. Benjamin came around the table and pulled her to her feet, kissing her soundly right there in the restaurant. Several other diners applauded, but Beatrice barely noticed. All she could feel was Benjamin's arms around her, and the absolute rightness of this moment. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were grinning like fools. I cannot believe this is happening, Beatrice said. 2 weeks ago, I was trapped under a wagon in a blizzard, certain I was going to die. Now I am here with you, planning a future. Life changes fast sometimes. The trick is being ready for it when it does. Benjamin tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. We will wait until Constance is well enough to travel, however long that takes. In the meantime, I will send word to Bill and Maria, let them know the plan. They are going to be thrilled. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Beatrice spent her days with Constance, who grew stronger by the day. She told her sister about Benjamin's proposal, and Constance was overjoyed, declaring it the most romantic thing she had ever heard. Benjamin divided his time between waiting at the hotel and exploring Las Cruces, always returning with small gifts for Beatrice, a pretty ribbon, a book of poetry, a bag of peppermint candies. Finally, 6 weeks after their arrival in Las Cruces, Dr. Harris declared Constance well enough to travel. They celebrated with a dinner at the nicest restaurant in town, just the three of them. Constance and Benjamin got along wonderfully, teasing each other with the easy familiarity of siblings. I approve, Constance told Beatrice later that night as they packed their few belongings. He is perfect for you, Bee, strong enough to match your spirit, but gentle enough to appreciate your heart. I think you will be very happy together. I think so too. And you? Are you really all right with coming to the ranch? You had your teaching job here. That job is already filled. They had to hire someone else when I got sick. Besides, Benjamin said there is a school near the ranch that needs a teacher. It will be a new start for both of us. Constance hugged her sister tightly. We will be together, and that is what matters most. They left Las Cruces 3 days later, a small party of three riding north toward the ranch. The weather was mild, the first hints of spring appearing in green shoots along the trail. The journey that had taken 5 days coming south took 7 days going north as they moved slowly to accommodate Constance's still recovering strength. But the extra time was pleasant, full of laughter and easy conversation. When they finally rode into the ranch just after noon on a bright March day, Maria came running out of the house with a cry of delight. You are back, and you brought your sister! She pulled both women into fierce hugs. Welcome! Welcome! Bill, come help with the horses. We have guests to settle. That first night, they gathered around the big table in the main house for a celebratory dinner. Maria had outdone herself, preparing all of Benjamin's favorite dishes. As they ate and talked and laughed, Beatrice felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. This was what home felt like. Not a place, but the people around this table. The sense of belonging and being cherished. After dinner, Benjamin asked Beatrice to walk with him. They wandered out to the portal and sat on the bench there, looking out at the land as the sun set in a blaze of color. I have something for you, Benjamin said. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple gold band. It was my mother's, It is the only thing I have left from my family, and I want you to have it. B, will you marry me? Properly, I mean, with a ceremony and witnesses and all the rest? Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes as she looked at the ring, then at Benjamin's hopeful face. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting all these years for her. They kissed as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. They married a month later in a simple ceremony at the small church in the nearest town. Bill gave Beatrice away, and Maria stood up with Constance as witnesses. The whole community turned out, curious about the woman who had captured Benjamin Vance's heart. Beatrice wore a dress she had sewn herself from blue calico, and Benjamin wore his best clothes, his dark hair neatly combed and his boots polished to a shine. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Benjamin kissed her with such tenderness that several women in the congregation sighed audibly. Beatrice laughed against his lips, happier than she had ever imagined possible. The reception was held at the ranch, a joyous affair with music and dancing and more food than seemed possible. Beatrice danced first with Benjamin, then with Bill, then with several ranch hands who had worked up the courage to ask, but she kept coming back to Benjamin, drawn to him like a compass to north. As the party wound down and guests began departing, Benjamin pulled Beatrice aside. "Ready to see your wedding present?" he asked. "I thought the ring was my wedding present." "That was the proposal present. This is different." He took her hand and led her away from the main house, past the barn, to a small adobe cottage she had not really noticed before. "Bill and I have been working on this for the past month. It is ours, Bee. Our home." He opened the door and led her inside. The cottage was small but perfect, a main room with a fireplace and kitchen area, a bedroom, and even a small room that could serve as a workroom or nursery. Someone, probably Maria, had furnished it simply but thoughtfully. Curtains hung at the windows, a quilt covered the bed, and a rocking chair sat by the fireplace. "Benjamin?" Beatrice breathed. "It is wonderful." "It is ours," he said again. "A place just for us. We will still take meals with Bill and Maria most of the time, but this is our space, our beginning." Beatrice turned in his arms and kissed him deeply. "I love it. I love you. I love this life we are building together." "So do I." Benjamin scooped her up, making her squeal with laughter, and carried her over the threshold of their new home. "Welcome home, Mrs. Vance." Life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Beatrice worked alongside Maria in the house and garden, learning the skills needed to run a ranch household. She also set up a sewing corner in the cottage and began taking in work from neighboring ranches, making clothes and mending tack. Her reputation as a skilled seamstress spread quickly, and soon she had more work than she could handle. Constance secured the teaching position at the nearby school and threw herself into it with passion. She boarded in town during the week, but came home to the ranch on weekends, filling the house with chatter about her students and their progress. She was courted by several local men, but none seemed to capture her interest. She claimed she was too busy for romance, but Beatrice suspected her sister was simply being careful, unwilling to settle for anything less than what Beatrice and Benjamin had. Benjamin continued working cattle with Bill and the other ranch hands. He was good at his work, respected by the men, and trusted by Bill to make important decisions. In the evenings, he would come home to the cottage, dusty and tired, and Beatrice would have dinner waiting. They would eat together, talking about their days, then sit by the fire until bedtime. On Sundays, they would ride out together, exploring the land, finding quiet spots where they could be alone. Their first anniversary passed, then their second. The ranch prospered, and so did their marriage. There were hard times, droughts that tested everyone's endurance, harsh winters that took a toll on the cattle, injuries and illnesses that had to be tended. But through it all, Beatrice and Benjamin faced everything side by side, their love growing deeper and stronger with each challenge overcome. In the spring of their third year together, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant. She told Benjamin one evening, as they sat on the portal of their cottage, watching the sunset. "I saw the doctor in town today," she said casually. Benjamin looked over, immediately concerned. "Is something wrong? Are you ill?" "No, nothing is wrong. In fact, everything is very right." She took his hand and placed it on her still flat belly. "We are going to have a baby, Benjamin. In early autumn, the doctor thinks." For a moment, Benjamin just stared at her, his expression stunned. Then a smile broke across his face, so wide and joyful that Beatrice started laughing. He pulled her into his arms, holding her gently, reverently. "A baby," he whispered. "We are going to have a baby. Oh, Bee, I am so happy I could burst." "Me too." "Terrified, but happy." "Terrified?" He pulled back to look at her. "Why terrified?" "Because I want to be a good mother. Because I want to give this child the kind of life and love they deserve. Because I know how quickly everything can change, and the thought of anything happening to you or our baby scares me." Benjamin cupped her face in his hands. "Nothing is going to happen to me or our baby. I promise you that. And you are going to be an amazing mother, Bee. You are the strongest, most loving person I know. Our child is so lucky to have you." "To have us," Beatrice corrected. "They are lucky to have us both." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Maria fussed over Beatrice constantly, making sure she ate enough and rested enough and did not overwork herself. Constance was beside herself with excitement at the prospect of becoming an aunt. Bill carved a beautiful cradle from oak, and Benjamin was endlessly attentive, treating Beatrice like she was made of spun glass. In early October, just as the cottonwoods were turning gold, Beatrice went into labor. It was long and difficult, but Maria was there to guide her through it, and Benjamin refused to leave her side, despite convention suggesting men should wait elsewhere. When their son finally arrived, just after dawn, screaming lustily, Beatrice wept with relief and joy. "He is perfect," Benjamin said, cradling the tiny baby with surprising confidence. "Look at him, Bee. He is absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Beatrice asked, exhausted but exhilarated. Benjamin thought for a moment. "What about William, after Bill? He has done so much for us. And then we could call him Will for short." "William Vance." Beatrice tested the name. "I love it. Welcome to the world, Will." Little Will was an easy baby, content to eat and sleep and observe the world with dark eyes that matched his father's. He was passed around among the ranch family, cuddled by Maria and Bill, doted on by Constance. Benjamin was a natural father, patient and gentle, often found singing to his son or walking him around the ranch when Will was fussy. Beatrice had never been happier. Every morning, she woke up beside the man she loved, looked in on their sleeping son, and thanked whatever force had put her on that mountain pass in the snow 3 years ago. That terrible moment when she thought she would die alone had led her here, to this life, to this family. When Will was 6 months old, Constance announced at Sunday dinner that she was engaged. The lucky man was James Miller, a widowed rancher with 2 young children who had been persistently courting her for over a year. Constance's face glowed as she told them about his proposal, and Beatrice felt her heart swell with happiness for her sister. "He is a good man," Constance said, "kind and patient and hard-working, and his children need a mother. I think I can be happy with him, Bee." "I think you will be very happy," Beatrice assured her. "He adores you. Anyone can see that." The wedding was held that summer, and Constance moved to James's ranch about 15 miles away. It was far enough to give them privacy, but close enough for frequent visits. Beatrice missed having her sister at the ranch, but she was thrilled to see Constance so happy. Life continued its steady rhythm. Will grew into a bright, curious toddler who delighted in following his father around the ranch. When he was 2, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant again. Their daughter Grace was born the following spring, an easy birth compared to Will's. She had her mother's fair coloring and her father's steady disposition. More years passed, rich with small moments that built into a life. Will's first words, Grace's first steps, Constance's children coming to visit. Benjamin grew more skilled at ranching, eventually becoming Bill's partner in the operation. Beatrice's sewing business expanded, and she trained several local women in the craft, creating a small cooperative. When Will was 7 and Grace was 5, Bill and Maria decided to retire, selling their share of the ranch to Benjamin and moving to town to be closer to their own grown children. It was bittersweet, saying goodbye to the people who had become family, but they remained close, visiting often. Running the ranch themselves was challenging but rewarding. Benjamin proved to be a fair and capable boss, expanding the herd and improving the breeding stock. Beatrice managed the household and finances with the same skill she brought to everything else. They hired more hands, built additional outbuildings, and slowly turned the ranch into one of the most successful in the region. One evening, when they had been married almost 15 years, Beatrice and Benjamin sat on the portal of their cottage, watching Will and Grace play in the yard before bedtime. Will was teaching his sister how to throw a rope, and Grace was concentrating fiercely, determined to master the skill. "They are growing up so fast," Beatrice observed. "Sometimes I cannot believe how much time has passed since that day on the mountain." "I think about that day often," Benjamin admitted. "How close I came to not taking that route, to not being there when you needed help. If I had left an hour earlier or taken a different trail, I would have missed you entirely. But you did not miss me. You were exactly where you needed to be, exactly when you needed to be there." Beatrice took his hand. "Do you ever regret it? The life we have built, I mean. It is not always easy. Regret it? Loving you and building this life with you is the best thing I have ever done. Every hard day, every challenge, every moment of worry or fear is worth it because I get to face it all with you beside me." He lifted her hand and kissed it. "You are still the woman I pulled from under that wagon, brave and determined. But you are also so much more. My partner, the mother of my children, the person who makes this house a home. How could I possibly regret any of that?" "You always know exactly what to say," Beatrice said, her eyes shining with tears. "I just tell you the truth. I love you, Beatrice Vance. I loved you then, I love you now, and I will love you for the rest of my days. And I love you, Benjamin. Always." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching their children play as the sun set over the New Mexico landscape. The land that had nearly claimed Beatrice's life had instead given her everything: a home, a family, a love that sustained her through every challenge. She thought about the telegram from Constance, the desperate decision to brave the storm, the moment the wagon had tipped and trapped her in the snow. Every choice, every hardship, every terrifying moment had led her here. She would not change a single thing. Grace squealed with delight as she finally managed to loop the rope around the post. Will cheered for his sister, picking her up and spinning her around. Benjamin chuckled, the sound warm and rich, and Beatrice leaned her head on his shoulder. This was happiness, she realized. Not the absence of struggle or pain, but the presence of love and purpose. It was children laughing in the yard and a husband's steady presence beside her. It was a home built with hard work and filled with laughter. It was looking back at where she had been and marveling at where she had arrived. As the stars began to appear overhead, Benjamin called the children in for bedtime. Will and Grace raced each other to the door, arguing good-naturedly about who had won. Beatrice stood and stretched, feeling the pleasant ache of a day well lived. Benjamin appeared beside her and wrapped his arm around her waist. Together, they walked into their home, into the life they had built together, into the future that stretched out before them full of promise and possibility. The door closed behind them, shutting out the night and holding in the warmth and light. And in that moment, everything was exactly as it should be. The storm had passed long ago, but what it had left in its wake was something far more precious than mere survival. It had left them with love, with family, with home, and that was worth every hardship, every fear, every moment of doubt they had endured along the way. They were exactly where they belonged, together,